in-house.
Yes. So if he does not.
Doesn't show a lot.
You can see.
Yes, thank you.
Yeah.
Oh, no. Okay, everyone, it's 1 p.m. So I'd like to call this meeting to order on this bright sunny April day and start by acknowledging with gratitude that we live and work on the traditional unceded territory of the Squamish. People have been stewards of these lands and waters surrounding the Huelaham, Bowen Island. And welcome to the Bowen Island Municipality meeting of Monday, April 22nd, 2024. And thank you for joining. I'm Andrew Leonard, the Mayor of Bowen Island Municipality and Chair of this meeting. I'd like to introduce the other elected members of council here today who are joining in person and online. Starting on my left, we have Councillor Alison Morse. Right is Councillor and Islands Trustee Sue Ellen Fast. To her left is Councillor and Islands Trustee Judy Getty. Joining us online today, we have Councillor Tim Wake, as well as Councillor Alex Jurgensen. We're also joined by members of our professional staff team here this afternoon, including our Chief Administrative Officer, Liam Edwards, who is online today, Corporate Officer Hope Dallas, and other members of our staff who may be presenting reports this afternoon. This meeting is being recorded, and when members of the public speak during the public comment and question and answer period of the meeting, your voice and presence will be included in the permanent recording, which will be available on our live stream on YouTube or at bowenislandmunicipality.ca. This council meeting is an official forum for the conducting of the business of local government. We all love our home. We are all passionate about what happens here. And I'd encourage everyone to maintain a constructive and respectful tone during the meeting and to direct comments during the public question and answer period, as well as the public comment period to myself. For those following along online or here in the room, the agenda and full council package for this afternoon's meeting is available at bowenislandmunicipality.ca. And just before starting, I guess, seeking adoption of the minutes, I did want to extend our thanks and gratitude to Hope Dallas, who has been a member of staff here for 11 years.
Correct.
And is off to a sunny job across the way with West Vancouver. And this will be her last council meeting with us. So thank you for all the work that you put in. Thank you for your contributions to the community. It's been valued, I know.
Thank you so much. I appreciate that. I'm just very glad. He's still living here on the island.
Still here on the island. Yes, our kids still go to kindergarten.
That's right.
So. And with that, I will look to the corporate officer for the addition of any late items today.
There are no on-table items.
No on-table items. And with that, I'll look for a motion that council approve the agenda.
Wait.
Yes.
I would like to add rescheduling of June 17th, consideration of the committee of the whole.
Yeah, we can do that by poll just after the meeting.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
I thought you meant in the meeting. Okay,
Right. Yeah, we'll just do like a doodle or something.
good.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay, so with that, a motion from council to approve the agenda for April 22nd, 2024, moved by Councillor Fast, seconded by Councillor Getty. Any discussion? Seeing none, I'll call the question. All in favor, raise your hand, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. And that carries unanimously. Moving on to public comments, I'll look to our corporate officer. How many public comments do we have today?
have one this afternoon, Patrick Moore, regarding 561 and 564 Collins Road.
Okay, so Patrick, if you want to join us up here at the front? Sure. A full 3 minutes. Your time doesn't start until you start speaking, so feel free to grab a seat and get comfortable.
Well, thank you, council members. Thanks for giving me a moment to speak. And basically, what I just wanted to do was give a brief kind of overview of what our intention is. And yes, it's hopefully this property at 561 and 564 Collins Road, which I believe is number 8 on the agenda. Just going to give you a quick history. I don't know if I mentioned, my name is Patrick Moore. My grandfather settled on the property over, I guess, at the turn of the 1900s, and owned a bunch of farmland, had 7 children. They were all granted a piece of property, all adjacent to close to the area that we're discussing. It's got a natural road that goes right through it. All the other properties decades ago was subdivided into a north and a south section. We were kind of the last remaining. My mother, Marion Moore, still lives on the island. She'll be 102 in less than 2 months. And part of the reason, or one of the main reasons, I guess, is that we're looking to subdivide this property is she's got a full in-house care 24/7. And it's expensive. The funds are going down quickly. My father passed away just over a couple of years ago. He was a veteran of the Second World War, and Department of Veterans Affairs paid for a lot of that. In-home care, we don't have that anymore. The funds are dwindling, and our intention is to look at perhaps getting it properly subdivided, similar to the ones that are all adjacent to it. Just getting back to my grandfather, James Cullen, he was one of the early settlers, as I mentioned. He was a farmer. He gifted a lot of some of his land to the Bowen Island United Church and Bowen Hall. He even was involved in helping build the church. My mother has owned my mother lives on what we call the farm property, which is at 516 Collins Road. And we're talking just up the road, this property that we're referring to. It's got a small dilapidated old cabin on it that I kind of grew up on. Went to that cabin all the time. We call it a shack. We were there ever since I was a kid, and I'm 64 years old now. So I've been coming up here very frequently. Again, just my mother kind of refers to that back property as the north side and the south side, even though it has it's designated as one piece of property. It's actually got 2 different addresses on it, and it's assigned different zones, I guess, too. What else can I comment on? I guess just like I said, our purpose is to perhaps sell the northern piece of property, keep the southern property in our possession in the family. The northern section has a well on it, would be suitable, I think. And the other factor we're kind of looking at too, ever increasing capital gains. We need, we might have to get some money as well, sell that property to help pay for that as well with as possible. We canvassed the neighborhood all around. We had full support of the neighborhood. I think that's pretty well about it. Just kind of wanted to get it out there, what our main purpose and aim of this is about. And thank you for your support.
Thank you for coming today and sharing your story. I appreciate it.
Questions at all?
I don't see any.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, yes, Councilor Getty.
I would point out that it's called Collins Hall. Not Bowen Hall anymore. It's actually called Collins.
Collins Hall, that's my grandfather.
Okay, no delegations today. Moving on to the consent agenda. I will look to council for any items that they wish to pull from the consent agenda. Councilor Getty.
12.13.
Any other councillors wishing to pull items from the consent agenda? Councillor Jurgensen.
I'd like to pull 4.4, which is the rescinding of the 2 policies.
Looks like you're done talking. Zoom.
And also Councillor Saunders is now here.
Yes, thank you for joining, Councillor Saunders.
I just worked so hard. I managed to put everything aside and can make it. So happy to be here.
Thank you. Okay, then, seeing no further items to pull, I'll look for a motion to adopt the consent agenda, moved by Councillor Getty, seconded by Councillor Fast. Any discussion? Seeing none, I'll call the question. All in favor, raise your hand, say aye. Aye. That carries unanimously. Moving on to the consent agenda items, we'll move in numerical order, starting with 4.4, the policy review. Over to you, Councillor Jurgensen, for a disposition of this item.
Audio now unmuted.
Okay, thank you. I did have one question to the corporate officer about this, regarding the second of the two policies, the remote work policy. And just wanting to make sure that, in the drafting of the new personnel policy that's referred to in the report, if there's anyone who is requiring for medical reasons, to work remotely, that is just captured in the new personnel policy. I know there's been a lot of workplaces where that's been kind of missed out when reworking the remote work policies. So I just wanted to ask if that be considered.
Thank you for your question, Councillor Jurgensen. I understand from speaking with our HR coordinator that the remote work will be captured in the revised HR policy that we brought forward.
Okay, perfect. Thank you.
Thank you.
With that, would you like to move the recommendation, Councillor rescind the interim employment policies 20-01 and 20-02, Councillor Jurgensen?
Audio now.
Yes, I would move those.
Moved by Councillor Jurgensen, seconded by Councillor Morse. Any discussion? Seeing none, I'll call the question. All in favor, raise your hand, say aye.
Aye.
And any opposed? Is that an aye, Councillor Saunders? I'll take it
It
as an aye.
was, yes.
Okay, then that carries unanimously. Thank you.
It was an aye, yeah.
Moving on to section 6, business arising from minutes, 6.1. Oh, right, 12.13. So 12.13, we have a letter from the city of Port Alberni regarding ABICC 2024 resolution submission. Over to you, Councillor Getty.
So I'm not sure what AVICC is, but the attachment to this is a very interesting report from the Office of the Seniors Advocate. And it talks about the resilience of seniors in rural areas. I've shared the link with the health center and with Seniors Keeping Young, but I think in terms of the demographics and the last census that we had, that this is an important group for Bowen, and it's a very good report, so I recommend it. Just highlighting it, not to refer it to anybody.
Right.
I
Yes.
I can't think of a committee that we've got that would be appropriate to refer it to, so I've just done it to Sky and the health center.
Well, it'll technically, I think, come back to us because it's a resolution from the Association of Vancouver Island and Coastal Communities. Yeah, that's going to UBCM, and it looks like Councillor Fast has a comment on this.
I don't think it'll come to us before UBCM because we're not part of this. This Association of Vancouver Island and Coastal Communities is the group I think we belong in, but we're belonging to the Lower Mainland Local Government Association is our membership currently. And so we'll see this in the fall at the Union of BC Municipalities. And I could suggest that you could refer it to the Accessibility Advisory Committee. Because some of these may overlap. That's probably the most appropriate group, or the Advisory Planning Commission.
If we're going to refer, it might be something to refer to the OCP steering committee.
Sorry?
The OCP steering committee, because it's about seniors and a portion of the population that would be dealt with in the OCP.
I think you could just refer it to information to whichever group. Judy, I'll second you.
All right, so for information, referral to the Accessibility Committee and the, do we have the OCP set up? The steering committee?
It could still be referred to in terms of reference.
Do it.
Right, so a motion to refer to accessibility in the official community plan steering committee. Is there a seconder for that motion? Seconded by Councillor Fast. Any further discussion? Seeing none, I'll call the question. All in favor, raise your hand, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? And that carries unanimously. Now jumping up to 6.1, service yard upgrades, update and next steps. We have our Director of Engineering.
Thank you. This was project that we discussed a few times with council, and it was recently reviewed at the first two meetings with the Mayor's Task Force on Infrastructure. And recommendation from that committee was that a report be brought forward to council, which is what is in the agenda in front of you. So as you're aware, the current Brooks Yard is not adequate. It's well past the end of its life and doesn't meet operational needs. So we've discussed that at some length in a little over a year ago, council meeting. So the most pressing occupational health and safety issues have been addressed by putting a temporary trailer on the site for lunchroom office space, so staff won't have to spend their time in an infested space. So that's good. It's not meeting needs, long-term needs. It's part. So just to back up a little bit, to provide some perspective on the site itself, we are recommending that service yard be developed with, current needs in mind, well, current and future needs in mind at the current site. It does have adequate space. It has to be developed efficiently to make use of that space. It is zoned appropriately, and it's got the appropriate services that are required, close at hand, readily available, and it's relatively centrally located on the island. We did look at some other possible sites, including the secondary service yard up on Salal Road, which does have a lot of space. It doesn't have any of the services that we would need. Those would have to be brought into the site, which would significantly increase the cost of the service yard project. It's also not as centrally located, which would mean that generally more driving time for staff to carry out their regular duties. We also looked at the former Fire Hall #1 site. The advantage there is a building with adequate garage space to meet our needs. It would require substantial seismic upgrading, and there was previous reports looking at that when Fire Hall questions were being considered. And it's also has very limited yard space, so we would likely need a second location to store materials and that sort of thing. Not ideal from that perspective. So backing up to the design that's occurred to date, looking at the current site. So we have back in 2021, an architect-led team led by Kasian was engaged to complete design, develop cost estimates, and they got about halfway through that process. So we're at the 50% design stage where we've been for a while now. In early 2022, the project was put on hold due to a number of infrastructure risks and risks and the budget implications of those that were happening on the island at the time. In particular, the trunk road storm sewer was a major issue being dealt with. And then earlier this year, council elected to not proceed with the remainder of Kasian's design contract. So it was put on hold. Had we proceeded, it would have gone down the path of a typical design bid build project where the design team completes the design, the project is tendered, a contractor is hired to build the project. And that's the most common form of project delivery. In the months that followed, we did look at alternative project delivery options. If we look at the fire hall project, which was in a difficult situation with respect to budget when there was a architect-led team that produced a design and the project was tendered, they were able to develop it a lot more cost effectively using a design build approach whereby one firm is hired to complete the design and construction. So you have some efficiencies there, which and one source of accountability essentially, which reduces the risk of errors in design leading to increases in cost and delays. It lends itself to identifying cost saving measures where you have the one firm that's carrying out the design and the construction, and generally can lead to better design decisions design decisions that make more sense in terms of the procurement requirements and the constructability of the project. So we did approach, a design build projects would typically start with a fixed price, and then all of the decisions that are made around the design and construction of the project would be geared towards maintaining that fixed price, delivering the project within that. So we did approach Liberty Contract Management, which is the firm that delivered the fire hall project. That was a successful project. They've got a lot of familiarity with construction on Bowen Island. Their references are all generally very good, and they've got a solid reputation in the industry. We did review the project in detail with them. And I should point out that the 50% design drawings, there was a lot of time spent looking at the program requirements and the space needs for the operational needs of the department. So that was is well reflected in those 50% design drawings. So those were reviewed with, and those needs were reviewed with Liberty. And they've produced a proposal for the development of a fixed price that would form the basis of the design build contract. They've provided some preliminary pricing that is quite a bit lower than what the Class C cost estimate, plus the additional factors that were embodied in the Casein estimate. That was about 3.95 million. Going back to the staff report from beginning of 2023. And Liberty has indicated a range of 3 to 3.15 would be a suitable target for fixed price design build that they'd be working towards. Could be lower than that, 2.85 to 2.95 if all the non-garage building components are delivered using trailer space as opposed to an integrated building, which is what was proposed and what's recommended. So the next steps would be for Liberty to complete design and value engineering to the point where fixed price design build proposal can be delivered to Bowen Island for our consideration. And this would be a collaborative process with staff, and council would be kept informed throughout the process. So if we embark on that process with Liberty, it doesn't mean that we're agreeing to or committed to entering into a design build contract service yard with them. It would just mean that if we end up not doing that, then we do owe them a certain amount that's included in the proposal of $27,612 as the compensation for the work they would be putting in to get to that point. And if we do enter into a design build contract with them, then that would be rolled in to the overall pricing for the project if we proceed with Liberty and they produce they would be able to work, in the May to July time period to produce a fixed price design build proposal. And that would form the basis for, our decision of whether to proceed or not. From there, we would need to, obtain, elect or send for loan authorization for the funds needed to proceed. And that would be, that would take the better part of the rest of the year to go through that process. And we'd probably be looking at 2025 design build project. So we're recommending that council direct staff to proceed on this process with Liberty. And that would be the next steps to addressing the currently inadequate service yard, which we have a responsibility to upgrade for the health and safety of our workers and for the operational needs of the department, and also for the environmental sustainability of our operations. We do have some contaminated site issues that have to be addressed as part of that project as well. So that's the recommendation. If there's particular questions or comments, concerns, to address those now.
To council for questions, Councillor Getty, Councillor Morse.
All right, so this is where you're asking at this point for the design, which is the 27,000, something like that? All right, so can that be made contingent on dividing the project up into, I'm not sure that we're gonna be able to manage the $3 or $4 million that this is ultimately gonna cost. So I'd be interested in seeing whether or not they can come up with something that can be done in chunks over time. I know, and then we have to balance between having it all done at once as a major project or doing it in some sort of a continuous basis, right? So can they design, can the ask of them be designed so that it's done in components?
You can look at that, yes.
All right.
It might be difficult for this project of this nature where
Yeah.
A big part of the project is one building.
Right.
And it's certainly a lot more efficient to be developing the other site components as part of the same construction project.
Without knowing the extent of the contaminated soil and what that's gonna cost in terms of the cleanup, right? That's still a big question mark. Is that correct?
It's not we're not 100% sure. We have a fair level of confidence that all we need to do in terms of contaminated soil is to remove the soil that's actually excavated as part of the construction process.
Then that should be tested again and.
Well, that would, we're assuming that would have to be disposed at a suitable facility, probably in Richmond.
Well, and the savings would be whether or not we can use it anywhere else or whether it's because it's just salt as opposed to
It's
heavy metals or
possible,
whatever.
yeah, it's
Okay.
possible we could come up with an approach where
Okay.
perhaps behind the retaining wall, we're using that soil.
Right. So from my perspective, and we haven't really discussed this in any detail in council, but you know, I think the priorities are moving the salts away from the creek and having that contained so that it doesn't contaminate in the future. And having some sort of a closed-in system, stabilizing the slope that's behind that, so that if there were any kind of an earthquake, the slope and the gas tanks are stabilized, so that we don't run into problems there. And then the garage building for protection of the what do you call it, moving stock, right? So in terms of what, and I don't know if anybody else has different priorities, right? So, but for me, if there was some way of making sure that those happened as part of design for the reclamation of this, and then the garage is the biggest building that needs to protect the moving stock, but the others could be trailers, and that could be much less expensive.
Yeah, it could be less expensive. It's not a, we did ask Liberty to look at that, and it's not a huge difference. And this difference between the 3 to 3.15 range and the 2.85 to 2.5.
Okay. You're dealing with big projects, right? We just went through the trust budget. We fought hard for $30,000. So when you say it's, $1 million or $100,000 isn't that much in a $3 million project, that's true, but it's still $100,000. Okay, so I would personally, I would really like us to nickel and dime everything, right? So if there's cost savings and something that can be, have some temporary solution that would last X number of years, and then maybe we're in better shape and we've got some surplus or some savings, then we could build the proper building, right? For some of the other outbuildings, not necessarily the garage. So I don't know if that can all be translated into what the ask is for the design, but it seems to me that we really need to be penny pinching. That's my spin. Sorry.
Okay. Councillor Morse and then Councillor Wake.
One question is, I've got several questions, but I noticed in our last news from Bowen Island that there's, we had done a notice of intent to direct award. Do we have to do that for this? So that would, because and then my next question has to do with the salt shed. I'm looking at the plan that we had looked at a year or so ago. There was no intention to actually move the salt shed on that plan from what I can figure out.
Yes, there would be a new salt shed as part of.
In the same location?
No,
Okay,
further,
so,
closer to where the current building is now.
okay, all right. Unfortunately, this plan doesn't have the existing building on it. So I guess we did have a simple solution offered from a member of the public for dealing with the salt shed and the contamination and does it need to be moved or can we work around that and just use the simple solution? And they would look at whether it would be better to have, the original one had a very involved combination garage and work, and staff building.
Yes.
Is that going to off the table and now we're looking at simpler solutions like prefab buildings and modular ATCO type?
It's not off the table, it's still an open question.
So pre-engineered steel building.
Well, a pre-engineered steel building would be the likely approach regardless. And it's just whether that building is a garage only or whether it encompasses all of the space requirements.
And some of these buildings come sort of almost stock inventory, like we get flyers at times, it's, this is there, it's ready. So we're not ruling out getting something that's standard off the shelf, pre-engineered steel building. Like
And
sometimes.
that could be part of the value engineering process that we would go through with Liberty, that maybe there's a standardization to reduce costs.
Yes, it's the Cassian design. I guess I've always said you can buy a Cadillac or a Mercedes, or you can buy a shed. And we don't need a Cadillac or a Mercedes, we need a shed.
Yeah, the Cassian design we wouldn't call it Cadillac, it was pretty basic.
Didn't look basic to me, my personal opinion. Okay. I really would like to try and make sure we keep the cost down as much as possible. If we don't need to move the salt and sand shed, we can work around it and use the existing one with a simple solution that the community members suggested. And it's good news that we don't have to dig out all the contaminated, it's just deal with what we are actually excavating. And if you're doing slab on grade, you don't have to do much excavating.
Yeah, there will be some, but try and limit it as much as possible.
And you've talked with the fire chief,
About Liberty,
working with Liberty.
Yes.
Thank you, Councillor Morris. Councillor Wick.
Thank you. I'm worried about how much time it's taken to get to this point with this project and how urgent it is. And I'm having trouble believing that if we do it in stages and phases, bits at a time, it's actually going to be cheaper. So I'd like to see the motion as recommended, and I'm happy to make that motion.
I'm just going to clear the speakers list first, Councillor Wick, and over to you, Councillor Fast, and then some comments from our CEO.
Thank you. I'm also in favor of the recommendation that's in front of us, and I'll be speaking in support of it. I don't really have any questions for the operations manager because for Patrick, the director of engineering, because I've been following this for a few terms now. And to me, it seems like we have been doing it in stages, and that this is now we're at the stage where we're actually getting the costs down. If we take this route, we're likely to get the costs down. And seeing this now, we've got some experience with the Liberty. My concern with doing it in stages and trailers is I've often been one of the staff people who has to work in an old trailer. They decline very quickly compared to most real buildings. And in my experience, in my career, and I don't think they give value for money. I mean, this is a 50-year-old work yard, as is described in the report. We've got more staff in there now than Capilano Highways did in contracting the roads for Bowen. Staff need to actually work out of that works yard, including when big problems happen, like a culvert blows out. So I'm kind of I like the idea of working with one company that we've got a track record with for the fire hall, and that staff are familiar with, and all the other things that the director of engineering said. So I'll be happy to second the motion when it comes. Thank you.
Thank you. Over to you, Liam.
Thank you, Mayor, and thank you for everybody's input and comments. These are good questions and comments. I just wanted to comment on the notice of intent to direct award. So for the initial design work, it's below our threshold that would require us to do that. But to move forward with the actual project itself, if we were to want to move forward with Liberty, that would be a direct award, and we would post it to BC bid. But first, we would be coming back to council for the approval in that regard. And we would be coming back to council regardless of what the preferred procurement approach would be. So the project will be coming back to council along the way before it advances. In terms of the phasing approach, we can definitely look at that through the value engineering and put that to Liberty to consider. Sometimes phasing a project like this, even from the design phase, costs a bit more just in the design element too, because you have to factor that in, because you have to be able to say, okay, we're going to do a full stop at this point, and the project has to be functional, or the asset or service has to be functional until the next phase then gets done. And so if you think about the bridge deck replacement for the Bowen Ferry, if they had been able to do that all in one go, in one shot, it would have taken a lot less time and probably a lot less money. I don't know what their actual budget was. And then will most always cost more money during construction element of a phasing of a project. And so and the other complicating factor of phasing a project like this is the elector assent requirement for the borrowing. Unless we were able to reduce it to many small phases where we didn't require elector assent, we would be having to go to elector assent multiple times. So I just thought I'd share the input, and I do appreciate everybody's comments on this though. Thank you.
Thank you. And over to you, Councillor Saunders.
Thank you, Mayor. I'll be really brief here, but to me, the most relevant part of this conversation is in the report and the conclusion, indicating service yard is inadequate. VIM has a responsibility to upgrade the service yard to provide a safe and healthy workplace for municipal employees. To me, like, this has been out there certainly the entirety of our term, it seems, and probably terms before this, and it hasn't been completely addressed yet. And I think we need to move forward. And I totally support the recommendation just based on that. We do have a responsibility, and we need to meet it right now, I think. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Saunders. And back to you, Councillor Wake, to move the recommendation.
I move that council direct staff to engage Liberty Contract Management Inc., LCM, for a cost not to exceed $27,612, excluding GST, to complete the design and value engineering required to provide a fixed price design build proposal for the Public Works Service Yard upgrade project.
Moved by Councillor Wake, seconded by Councillor Fast. Any further discussion on this? Just some comments from my observation of the process so far. I do appreciate the move to a design build procurement method. I think that move is going to be a net positive for contracting a capital works project like this, given some of the challenges that we've seen when we've had design bid build on some recent projects, and the difficulty of having a single point of accountability between an architect, a designer, and a contractor. So having that single point, Councillor Saunders is laughing to that one. I think that's going to be a big benefit. I would love to see, I'm looking forward to seeing the results of the value engineering process. I do I will be voting in favor of the recommendation, but I'm very curious to see what comes back from that value engineering process, because I would like to see at the end of it, if we're going to go to elector assent, being able to speak in a literate way, or have all council members be able to speak in a literate way to, yeah, we looked at every angle of this thing. We looked at prefab, we looked at custom build, we looked at soil reclamation, all of that was contained. We looked at the notion of modular build versus building it all at once. And I think there's been a benefit where costs have come down from that estimate we received almost a year ago. But if council is really able to see that as a result of Liberty's value engineering, if we're going to do a direct award, that would be fantastic. And I would highly encourage that. This is a project that has to get done. We're about to pass a financial plan by law, and a 5-year plan that's going to see capital renewal and replacement almost double in the next 5 years. And a lot of those roadworks and public works projects are going to happen out of that service yard, which right now is falling apart. So I'm happy to vote in favor of this. And unless there's any other comments, I will call the question. Okay, seeing none, I'll call the question. All in favor, raise your hand, say aye.
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 Any opposed? Seeing none, that carries unanimously. Thank you, Mr. Graham. And speaking of financial plan bylaw 7.1, we have our Chief Financial Officer here to give us a final update on the financial plan bylaw number 647.
Thank you, Mayor. Through the mayor to the rest of council, the bylaw before you is for fourth reading, final consideration and adoption today. It's the Northern Municipality 5-year financial plan from 2024 through 2028. It does include a proposed tax increase of 9.5%, which which is expected to be an increase of about $317 per year for an average property tax owner. It does include significant contributions to reserve funds in order to support the investments, the necessary investments in capital infrastructure that are required over the coming years. So the financial plan does need to be approved by council before May 15th of each year. And I think that's it. I leave it to council for final consideration.
Thank you. Any questions for the CFO? Council Morse.
It's really nice to know it's $317 for the average house, but so that people can extrapolate what's the average house value.
Oh, this year it's down a little bit from prior years. It's 1.585 million. It was just over 1.6.
And we got the final tax roll.
We just got it last week, yeah.
Okay. So no further questions. Can I have someone move the recommendation, please? Councilor Getty?
Move that bylaw 647/2024 cited as Bow Island Municipality 2024-2028 Financial Plan Bylaw 647/2024 be reconsidered and finally adopted.
Moved by Councilor Getty,
Second.
seconded by Councilor Saunders. Any further discussion on this? Just a thank you to you and your team for preparing this. I know budget season is always busy and intense. The increases that we're seeing this year, I think, strike a nice balance. They are in line with what we're seeing in other places in the region, but also combined with our 5-year financial plan, I think really starts to get at those issues of needing to contribute to reserves and needing to contribute to capital renewal, which has been a much discussed and significant pillar of importance, I think, for this council. So thank you for all your work on this.
Thank you.
Okay. With that, I'll call the question. All in favor, raise your hand. Say aye.
Aye.
And that carries unanimously.
Thank you.
Great. Thanks so much. Next up, item 7.2, encroachment policy and bylaw 629/2023. We have our manager of planning and development here with us to discuss this one.
Thank you, Mayor. So this is, yes, a bylaw for an encroachment policy. It came out of council direction from 2021, council directing staff to develop a policy to address encroachments on municipal property. And staff presented a bylaw to council at the December 11th meeting, which was the first reading. It's bylaw 629 to amend the traffic use of streets bylaw to enact, to empower staff to have encroachment permits and at that meeting, council referred the bylaw to the Islands Trust, along with the Islands Trust policy statement checklist. And the Islands Trust Executive Committee reviewed that and provided notice. It advised us that the bylaw is not contrary to or adherence with the Islands Trust policy statement. So after receiving that notice, staff made some minor amendments to the bylaw 629, particularly looking at sort of some of the grammar of the clauses and subclauses, making sure it's consistent. We looked at, took another look at the structure of the conditions on the sample permit and removed some and reworded some and made, some minor edits to those conditions. And then we've made a couple amendments to the current draft encroachment policy that's not up for council's adoption at this meeting, but just sort of as staff and public works staff have been working through the draft policy with potential applicants. So one was defining what a low-lying shrub was, which is something that's exempt from being an encroachment policy, but when is it low-lying? And the other one that came up was the idea of utilities that are maintained by a private or public utility, just specifying that they don't require an encroachment permit. And that was specifically when we were working with the Cowan Point utility in South Bowen, specifying that that's not something that's covered by this encroachment policy, that their works exist in our right of way, similar to other public utilities like you can see Shaw or TELUS or BC Hydro obviously exist in our road right of way. That's not something that we would be permitting as an encroachment. We're in the process, so it's received first reading. It's been referred to the Islands Trust. It's here for consideration of second and third reading. And then we'll be returning the bylaw and looking for adoption of the policy at a future meeting. So the recommendation is that the bylaw receive second reading as amended and third reading. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Martin. Any questions to the planner? Councillor Getty, followed by Councillor Fast.
Thank you, Mr. Martin. So I think it's the same questions that I asked when we first saw this, but 2B, the driveway access permits, any encroachment associated with the issuance of a municipal driveway access permit and where driveway access construction guidelines are met. This is maybe a minor encroachment and not require a permit. And then later in 3J, areas constructed for the parking of vehicles, quote, in brackets, beyond regular off-street parking. So it's still not clear to me what, I live in Deep Bay on Lenora, so there's, every house has street parking, as long as the four wheels are off the paved part of the road, seems to be the general attitude of people. So is that considered a minor encroachment when it's on the boulevard?
So I guess, so the driveway access permit is exempt. Our driveway access permit has guidelines about like maximum width that it goes into, right? So that would be the driveway access permit, not an encroachment. And then our traffic and use of streets bylaw allows parking as long as your four wheels are off the pavement. But I think what the distinction is that it's about the constructing of the area for the parking of vehicles. So if somebody says, I want to build an area, I want to do work in the road right of way to create an off-street parking area, that's what we're looking at as, that's what needs the encroachment. So it's about the doing of work on the side of the road that would be requiring it. So versus area, versus the side of the road, the road has a shoulder that is there, that is open for, the public can park in that shoulder, as opposed to property owners looking to construct an off-street parking spot.
So if I wanted to construct a shelter so that my car would be parked in the shade instead of, or out of the snow or something like that, that would be a construction for parking purposes, and I would definitely need to have permission and a permit and possible, okay.
Or we see people doing things like blasting off the shoulder to try to create a off-street parking, or building a retaining wall and infilling to create an off-street parking area.
And the driveway access permits, whatever there is from the road to the property, that's where you get a driveway access permit?
Yeah.
All right, so that this, and then the fees, that would be like the $150 and the however much time is necessary for staff to look at it, and whether or not there's an easement and et cetera, et cetera.
Yes, and then it would be for national, something that rises to the level of needing an encroachment permit, it would be the annual fee based on the area that is being covered by the encroachment permit.
So my bush that's over 1.5 feet, I should get a permit for it? It's a lilac, it can go.
Thank you, Councillor Getty. Over to you, Councillor Fast.
Thank you. I think I asked this question last time to Planner Martin. It's just about the unopened public beach accesses, the ones that exist on the map and the public, what I think of as rights of way. But they're not open to the public. And I'm looking in the definitions. Would that fit under street? An unopened public right of way to the water?
Yes, so I think those exist generally as like undeveloped roads. So they're legally roads on the plan. We own them as roads, like as a roadway, like there'd be dedicated type of subdivision. They're generally provided under when you provide a highway access to this.
Right.
That's generally where we've secured them and have them, but many of them are like undeveloped, I think we would say. So it's legal for somebody to walk down that. It's just, in many cases, it's not feasible to walk down it.
Right.
It's still legally public.
Okay. That's great. Thank you. I just don't know if, as a member of the public, I would know that by looking under street. Just the definition there, it says street means public roadway, trail and sidewalk, or any other normally open to the use of the public. So I wouldn't, but I realize that this is a bylaw, not the communications that might go out around it. So that helps me, and I think that means that the multi-use pathway, causeway, those things would also fit under street.
Yeah, I mean, the multi-use path we're building within the road right of way.
Okay.
Or I guess it would be a right of way that we've secured in some way.
Yeah. Okay. That was my main one. Thank you. And I see you've made the change to the 0.6 meters height, which is just above my knee. So if there was a retaining wall or something, I think most people could clamber over that like a log. Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Fast. Seeing no further questions, do I have a mover for the recommendation? Councillor Fast?
I'd be happy to. I move that bylaw number 629, 2023, cited as Bowen Island Municipality Traffic and Use of Streets bylaw number 133, 2005, amendment bylaw number 629, 2023, be read a second time as amended. And that bylaw number 629, 2023, cited as Bowen Island Municipality Traffic and Use of Streets bylaw number 133, 2005, amendment bylaw number 629, 2023, be read a third time.
Moved by Councillor Fast, seconded by Councillor Getty. Any further discussion? Seeing none, I'll call the question. All in favor, raise your hand and say aye.
Aye.
And that carries unanimously. Thank you, Mr. Martin. And we are on to your staff report in 8.1, 561 and 564 Collins Road, OCP RZ 2023-0297. Over to you.
Thank you. So this is an application we received at 564 Collins Road. So here's its location. It's a property that's about just over 3 hectares in area. And just by way of context, here it is located. So you see the property itself begins sort of immediately north of Crippen Park, and it straddles Collins Road down sort of past Collins Farm, past Little Red Church, with a road that dead ends with a property that again abuts Park. The designation of this area is R1 Rural 1 in our OCP. So to provide lots of a size that help maintain and enhance the rural resource values of the island, and which provide for opportunity groups, rural lifestyles. And there's a specific policy, a whole policy in your report that is highlighted, is that in areas designated rural 1, the average parcel size is 2 hectares. So typically to comply with the OCP, then that property would have to be 4 hectares in size to subdivide to make 2 properties that are each 2 hectares in size. And the zoning for this property is unusual in that it's a split zone. So the land use bylaw designation, or the land use bylaw zones are different according to which side of Collins Road you're on. So on the south side, they are in the SR1A, so Settlement Residential 1A zone, and that zone variation has a 1.2 hectare minimum lot size. Whereas on the north side of the street, it's in the rural residential 2 zone, which has a 2 hectare minimum and a 4 hectare average lot size. So the takeaway is that if the entire property was zoned the SR1A zone, then it could be subdivided into 2 lots. So the 3 hectare lot could be subdivided into 2 1.5 hectare lots and comply. But as a portion of it is in that RR2 zone, it doesn't comply with the RR2 zoning lot sizes. So the proposal before you is an application to amend our land use bylaw and OCP so that the property may be subdivided into 2 lots divided by Collins Road. Each could be at least 1.4 hectares in area. So the Collins Road doesn't exactly perfectly bisect it, but one in this proposal, one would be 1.478 and one would be 1.609 or something. So, but at least 1.4 hectares each. So the simplest way for this rezoning to come about would be to place the entire property into the SR1A zone, which would permit the subdivision. One of the things that we looked at in the report is just doing a comparison of neighboring lots. And it is a bit of a strange area in that many of the lots are below the size designated in the OCP. So the OCP calls for the 2-hectare size, and we found quite a number of them are below the size. Many of them seem to have existed previously where they all straddled Collins Road and have all been subdivided. This one was not. But the changes in the OCP and the land use bylaw means it's not possible now to subdivide this one like the neighbors have been. The report also talks about the conservation development policy. And then so the applicant proposed 2 contributions to be made through the application to comply with that policy. So one looking at a trail network contribution. So the possibility to connect a trail from Collins Road into Crippen Park. And the other being that to protect under a covenant the residential lot, so at least 50% of each site to be protected from development. So the applicant provided an environmental assessment as part of their application. One of the things that identified was a wetland in the northern portion of the lot, and so that would be part of the area that would be protected. And then we also sort of suggested initial staff level is that the southern portion of the southern half would be another spot for potential protection. So the land there slopes down towards Crippen Park. It sort of goes up and plateaus halfway down the lot and then descends down towards Crippen Park and the trail. And that would be a natural sort of protected place, is sort of that southern end of the lot where it backs onto Crippen. And then as an alternative, so council did see a sort of similar application recently on Hummingbird Lane, where again, it was looking to amend the OCP and the land use bylaw to permit one lot to subdivide into 2. And in that case, council directed staff not to pursue it further until the OCP plan is updated. So that may be an alternative council wants to pursue. And the report does go into some ways that this application is different than that one on Hummingbird. So other than that, the staff recommendation is to refer the application to the Advisory Planning Commission and the Parks, Trails, Greenways Advisory Committee for recommendation. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Martin. And then what's the process after it comes back from?
It would come back with the results of referrals. We would then be seeking direction to draft a bylaw, or bylaws, I guess, and bringing some recommendation on what the bylaw will look like. Bringing bylaws back for first reading. It gets referred to the Allen's Trust consultation at that point, and then it would need a public hearing as well as a bylaw to amend the OCP.
Questions from council? Councillor Fast.
Not really a question. I just want to say that I'm a neighbor down at the bottom of the hill, and Miriam Moore has been a dear friend of mine. And however, I'm not a next door neighbor. I have tramped through these a couple of times. I think with permission, I'm not sure. And I think it's, I'm in favor of the recommendation. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Morse.
This is just going to make it similar to what the rest of the neighborhood is. If I'm looking at the map, I was totally confused when I saw the application, the 2 different addresses, and saying, why are we doing this? So I don't have a problem with it at all.
Yeah, my only, what do we have questions? One is, so there's the proposed trail that would connect to Crippen Park. What's the access to Crippen Park now from that neighborhood? Do folks technically have to go a long way around?
I think the official access would be down at the bottom along Reed Road. There's a trail connection that comes up from there.
Down by the church.
Okay.
And I think then in this case, like one would be consulting with Metro Vancouver, or we would be taking a trail access right of way for future connection. There would actually be building a trail until we know that it connects to Crippen and not like connects to a trail network on Crippen Park.
Okay. I'm in favor of the recommendation. This feels really like a housekeeping subdivision to me, given that the property straddles both roads and many of the other properties don't kind of fit within the existing zoning. So I have no problem in doing this presently outside of the OCP process, because I think it's consistent with the neighborhood, and given that there's the conservation development policies being respected, that there is a trail network this tongue transplant isn't working today. Contribution is ultimately net positive. I'm happy to send it to referral, or I'd also be happy to entertain a motion that just directs staff to craft a bylaw. Councillor Pest?
Do we have the one about just, I think I would just send it. I don't think I should be the one making the motion. Step back for a minute, but I will say that over the years, living on that road, people are trying to commute down to the ferry or to go to their offices in different parts of the island, wherever it is they're working. And they cut through the back of their own property and their neighbor's property. So the idea of a trail might also reduce any possible trespass issues, although I don't think anybody's been worried about that, but there's liability with that. And also just encourage active transportation because people, it is walkable there to get to Artisan Square and schools and things like that, where people have worked.
Councillor Getty.
Well, I know and love Marion as well, so with that bias in mind, I would certainly I like the end result in terms of her being well cared for. But I'm not sure about bypassing the committees. And I think that as much as I could vote now in favor of this, but I think that it's also important to get some input. And I really like the conservation development policy idea in terms of making some sort of formal connection to a trail system. So I don't think it's going to, I think it's different from Hummingbird. I don't think it's going to change the neighborhood. I don't think that anything they could build there would be different from what is already happening in the neighborhood. And I think Hummingbird was pushing the envelope a little bit more. And that, from my perspective, is why I had trouble with that one. But if I can leave my bias aside, I don't have any problems with this application. But I think that it would be very helpful to get, so as we're not in a great rush, I think it would be helpful to get input from the trails in particular.
Might propose then just a small amendment for process, just so it doesn't need to go to committees, come back to us, then go to staff to draft, is just adding at the end of the recommendation where it says direct staff to refer back with the results of the referrals in a draft bylaw.
And a draft bylaw.
Yep. So it goes to committee, staff can get the committees, staff can make whatever changes, and then it just simply comes back to us as a draft bylaw instead of needing to add an extra step.
Could see the draft bylaws for consideration of first.
Sure. Yep. So the motion that I'm proposing is that council refer application OCP RZ 2023-0297, the Advisory Planning Commission and the Parks Trails Greenways Advisory Committee for recommendation and direct staff to refer back the results of the referrals.
And draft bylaws for consideration of first reading.
And draft bylaws for consideration of first reading. I'm happy to move that if there's a seconder.
Second.
Second by Councillor Morse. Any further?
Second.
Everybody, you get a second, you get a second, you get a second. Any further discussion on this one? Seeing none, I'll call the question. All in favor, raise your hand, say aye.
Aye.
And that carries unanimously. Okay, thank you, Mr. Martin. 8.2 electric vehicle charging station fee update. We have our Island Community Planner, Drew, back in here joining us today. Over to you, Mr. Beckett. Have that effect on people.
So, thank you, Mayor and Council. So, Council approved 2 EV chargers at the Bowen Island Public Library on March 14th, 2022, with a fee rate of $2 per hour applied for the first 2 hours and $3 an hour for the remaining hour. The library has an existing 3-hour parking limit for all vehicles. At the time of approval, Council requested that staff return with an update on the actual earnings of the chargers, and also indicated that staff should investigate a possible painting scheme for the chargers. So originally a 10-year projection of costs was shown to council at the time of installation. The life cycle cost estimate has been updated here with 2 years of actual data and then new projections for several years further based on that data. So while the first year of operations saw the chargers lose money due to higher than expected installation costs, they greatly increased revenue in the second year, made a profit even considering previous year's lost. It was originally intended that the chargers would earn enough to cover the cost of replacing the 2 chargers at the end of their 10-year lifespan. So as you can see, that was a cost of almost $6,000. So yeah, look at the end of this cost cycle, we're be very safe in being able to cover that cost. And finally, it's noted that the chargers have not been painted and the backboard of the charging ports is unfinished wood. So council may choose to assign a paint scheme. I've included an example paint scheme from the BC Hydro chargers, which are blue and white. So of course, those are kind of a graphic design on the side, and this would be paint, but that's the idea.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Packin. I will look to council for any questions of the planner. Councilor Morse?
Well, I've always been curious, since they were installed, why they aren't more substantial units like you see in town. You don't see, or the ones that are in the picture. Are these always attached to boards like that elsewhere in the province, or do they have a little nice unit that they can have around them?
I've just looked at some of the units, like there's many different units that we can purchase. So yeah, I couldn't really tell you why we have these small ones compared to those more substantial ones, yeah, but
I think we need something that paints them and identifies them. It's more visible and looks nicer than a piece of wood, which is going to deteriorate quickly and being out in the weather.
I see a comment from our CAO.
Thank you, Mayor. Yeah, Councillor Morris, I think you're correct in that ours does look a little more rustic than normal. I may be wrong, but it looks like the photo of the BC chargers on the right-hand side could be level 3 chargers, which are far more substantive than level 2 chargers. But I do agree that we should make our chargers more robust and weatherproof. But level 2 chargers are very simple. Like you can just pop one on the side of your home, and so they don't generally have to be a very substantive piece of equipment. But I do agree that we should make them more robust and stand out more too, so that it's more clear.
That's best.
I see in your report, thank you for this report. It's great to see the use that they're being used. And I often see them in use and starting from as soon as they were installed, which is great. I see you refer to residents. Do you have any idea about visitors who may be using them? Because I think at the beginning of this discussion years ago, there was the question of whether visitors might get stranded over here with no access to a public charger. Do you have any information?
no, sadly,
Okay.
no, just in terms of the raw data we get.
It's just out of interest, because otherwise I support these recommendations and I'd be happy to make the motion. It's good to have this report. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Fast. Councillor Wake, followed by Councillor Getty.
I have a similar charger on my house, and the charger itself is robust and I think is fine enough, but certainly we could amend the resolution to include some paint and some protection for the structure that's holding it. And I'd certainly be in favor of the motion.
Thank you, Councillor Wake. Councillor Getty.
Just arising from the question that Councillor Fast asked, the FLO network, can we get that kind of information in terms of some idea of whether it's a visitor or a resident when they pay?
Trying to think.
It'd be worth asking.
Yeah, I can ask the company. Yeah, I mean, I believe they swipe a card.
You have, if I may, Mayor, you have to have an account with Flow, and so they may have the account holders' information, but there may be some privacy implications in terms of releasing that data.
Right, all right.
Freedom of movement and all that.
Oh, sorry, go ahead. Councillor.
You know, the postal code. So I'm prepared to move. That's for the painting and the.
Possibly. What was the previous resolution? Did we have a previous resolution that addressed painting, or was it just to look into?
Yeah, it's basically just that staff investigate a painting scheme.
Okay. And then my question, just around fees, what's the average charger fee for these types of stations in Vancouver?
Oh, I want to look into, I mean, I think it's pretty typical in the $1 or $2 range kind of thing. But
just, I mean, feels low. I feel like we could go for double what we're asking here. But also happy to look at that if we ever discuss parking in the Cove. So I will look to, who wanted to make the, Councillor Getty, since you're.
Council accept the electric vehicle charging station fee update report dated March the 22nd, 2024, and direct staff to continue with the existing operator's network service.
Right, moved by Councillor Getty. Seconded by Councillor Fast. Any discussion on this? Seeing none, I'll call the question. All in favor, raise your hand, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? And that carries unanimously.
I have another one.
Aye.
Yeah, just on the issue, I mean, does staff really need a resolution to add a coat of paint to this thing, or is that something that can be just dealt with at a public works level?
yeah, I was already talking with all of it, so.
Great. Okay, thank you so much, Mr. Beck. And 11 new business update, Council on Metro Vancouver business. The 8.3, skipped over the CAO update because he's not here sitting beside me. Over to you, Liam.
Thank you, Mayor, and thank you, Councillor Morris.
Councillor Getty.
Oh, Councillor Getty. Okay, sorry. I have two brief updates. I'll try to keep it short. And one is just about updates about the community center, because I know that folks are pretty keen about receiving updates on that. And so I met on site last week with the vice president of the construction company, and he was pretty confident in his assurance that they'll be able to complete the project within the current time frame that they've provided, and the current schedule provides for a handover date of July 19th. There is a caveat with that, and it primarily revolves around the timing of getting BC Hydro to energize the building. And so essentially we've got BC Hydro lined up as best as we can, but we know that there is a waiting period from once they approve the final design of the connection to the power supply to when they actually make the connection. And our schedule allows for, I believe it's between 6 or 8 weeks of duration between the approval of the design and the actual energizing of the building. So that feels like an ample amount of time in the schedule. So if the BC Hydro is able to energize sooner, then things could move along sooner. So we're all trying to impress upon BC Hydro the need to move faster. We also received some positive news about the roof last week. And so fingers crossed, we'll actually see some metal going up this week. So the roofing, the actual roofing inspector and our building inspector and our architects and the constructors all met last week, and everybody felt pretty confident about where things were at with the roof. And then we did receive the green light from the warranty provider. So we should be seeing those tarps come off and metal going on in the very near future. I'm hoping it's on by the time I get back to BC. And so that's it for my update on the community center. Maybe I'll pause there to see if there were any questions from council about that project.
I don't see any from around the room or online.
Great. And I did also want to echo the mayor's opening comments about the appreciation shared for all of Hope Dallas's wonderful service to the municipality and the community more broadly. And so Hope, you'll always have an ally in me, and I really appreciate everything that you've done for supporting the community and supporting me when I first moved here and started this job. And so, West Van's very lucky to get you, but I can hold a grudge for a long time. So I just, no, all kidding aside, I am very proud of all of the great work that you've done. And I think that they're incredibly lucky to have you. And, and I also wanted to thank you too for the work you've done with your team to set them up nicely to be able to support us going forward with your loss. So thank you, Hope.
Thank you, Liam. It's been a great pleasure, and it's been so nice to receive so many kind comments and emails and run-ins at the street and at the pub. And so I really appreciate it. It was a hard decision. So I'll miss. Yeah. And I'll be back. Don't worry. Just like Christy.
Yeah. We'll be here.
All right. Any questions or comments for the CAO? Seeing none, moving on to new business. Update to council on Metro Vancouver business. Not a ton happened last week, so special board meeting, which went quickly into close, was a workshop. So there's Metro Vancouver is working on its budget now and working on its financial plans. The Mayor's Committee meeting on April 11th focused on an update from Carol Saab, the Executive Director of the Federation of Canadian Municipalities, really around some of their work and continue to press the federal government on new funding strategies for municipalities. Interesting watch if you wanted to check that out. There's also, what else is Metro Vancouver doing? Mayor's Committee nominated itself for a number of UBCM awards. One which was interesting though was really the First Nations Burrard Bridge development, the Sinaku, I think if I'm pronouncing it right. They have a real interesting project there where Metro Vancouver and the development has partnered to all of the heating in that building for 6,000 rental units are going to come through heat that's recovered from municipal sewage, which is ultimately going to reduce greenhouse gas emissions by over 4,000 tons per year, which is a big deal and a great project there. TransLink, the big announcements out of TransLink this last week, if anybody caught it, there was an announcement in North Vancouver where the province finally released its $300 million of capital funding. Of course, purchasing new buses so that TransLink can increase service. No operational funding yet, but the province also committed an additional $179 million, which was left over from some of their COVID funding and emergency relief funding that TransLink now has use of as well. The mayors, as well as TransLink, continue to press the federal government for deployment of the Permanent Transit Fund, which continues to be delayed, and I think we'll see it in 2025 or 2026 now. That's everything that's coming out of TransLink. Unless there's any questions, I will move over to our Islands trustees, Trustee Fast and Trustee Getty, for updates on Islands Trust business.
I'd be happy to begin. If people want to look at 12.5 in your info items, it's the highlights of the Islands Trust Conservancy Board meeting. And this is one of the arms that Bowen contributes to. This is the conservation arm, the nature reserves and conservation covenants. The other one is the Trust Council, trust area-wide services, the Federation, the Family of Islands. So this, I think, is, I wanted to bring it to your attention anyway. The Islands Trust Conservancy is required every few years to submit its plan to the Minister of Municipal Affairs. And this time they had asked for a little extra time in order to further engage with First Nations. That's what was included in the plan. What happened was that the minister responded by saying she's going to have to approve any new acquisitions or covenants needed to come to the minister for review before the board signs off. And so this is partly to do with further engagement with First Nations being required, and the Minister of Municipal Affairs is going to be watching how that all plays out. I'm not on this board, I don't know about it, but I just wanted to flag it with the committee so they know that this is happening in the trust area. We have 3 nature reserves on Bowen that are through the Islands Trust Conservancy, and a few conservation covenants on private land as well that they manage. So now they will, if they're going to take on others, I imagine that they will need to have that engagement, not that they don't reach out already, and they do, and they have a declaration for reconciliation, and they have a strategic plan, this kind of thing. But they will also need the minister's approval for acquisition. And so that's new. So I wanted to bring that to your attention. And then coming up at the June Trust Council, in the middle of June, that'll be on Salt Spring Island, and that'll be the 50-year celebration. So it's a little bit younger than Metro Vancouver Regional District, but 1974. So they're going to have a little bit of a celebration or some kind of happenings over there. And the budget isn't posted yet. Or sorry, the budget passed last time, but the agenda is not posted yet. And I'll hand it over to Councillor Getty.
It's been relatively quiet for the trust with me, and I've been involved with the CAO hiring committee, and it's taking much longer than anybody expected, just in terms of the process to get through and to figure out how to hire consultants to help with the hiring process and all of it. So, Liam, if you're ever thinking about changing positions, you have to give us at least a year's notice. So Russ Hodson-Pillar gave us 6 months, and it's nowhere near enough time. So just a heads up, it's much, much more complicated than you would think, but it's a very interesting process, and the group is working well. So we're at the stage where we're about to hire. They've been through, they thought there'd be 2 or 3 applications for the consultants that would do the screening for us. And we've ended up with 12. So we've been through a very lengthy process of trying to narrow that down to, I think they've got it down to 2 or 3 that we have to decide on tomorrow morning. So a process.
Any questions for the trustees? Seeing none, we'll move on down to question period. Do we have anybody in the room or online for question period?
No, we've not.
Nope. And with that, I will look for a motion to adjourn. Councillor Getty, seconded by Councillor Fast. Any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor, raise your hand, say aye. Aye. And that carries unanimously. Okay, thank you. Hope she's going to take us off YouTube.
Well, is it the same link for the next meeting, or is it a different one?